Hello guys, welcome back to the channel. So on my quest to bring a lot of people to talk about the Global Talent Visa and just to enlighten you on this visa and how to get this visa, I had to bring Marilyn to the channel. Marilyn, welcome, and how are you?
Yeah, I'm all right. Thank you. Thanks for having me on your channel, Raymond.
Oh, nice. So where are you at the moment?
Yeah, I'm based in the UK at the moment. Yeah,
Okay.
Midlands person.
Oh, Midland, right.
Yeah.
So guys, Marilyn is UK plus Australian Global Talent Visa recipient. If I have people on the floor, I will say everybody should stand up and clap for you. Right. So congratulations on getting these two visas. Really proud of you.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
And lastly, on this interview, you guys will have to learn more about the Global Talent Visa and the application process from Marilyn's perspective. Believe me, Marilyn is likely to have valuable insight into the type of skills and experience that the UK and Australia is looking for in applicant, as well as specific criteria that are used to evaluate candidates. She has been there and done that. So, first of all, let's get to know you.
Okay, so I'm going to probably start from my journey to the UK, how it all started. So I came to the UK I finished my bachelor's in electrical and electronic engineering, and within that time, done my national youth service. But I was also looking out for opportunities to come down, like they say, Jawa to the UK, and I was really searching for scholarships, sponsorship, to come over. And that was when I applied for several scholarships as well, then got one, the NDDC scholarship
Oh,
to
nice.
do my master's here in the UK. That was in 2016. That was when I came over to the UK to do my master's. And from that point, I know what I saw in the NDDC scholarship. So for me, I decided any other scholarship was going to be more of like a foreign-based scholarship for me rather than because of the challenges I had with that particular scholarship. And that was when I started to also apply for different scholarships that could help me, studentship as it's also called, for my PhD studies. So that was, at some point, yeah, I got some scholarships and I had to choose the one that eventually got me through my PhD at the
Okay.
University of Leicester in computer science. So that's what I studied. And my research was centered around deploying artificial intelligence, machine learning algorithms on Internet of Things systems or environments.
Okay.
Yeah, so that is on the academic side of me, but also on the side around maybe I've done lots of volunteering, lots of work in the digital technology sector, which I didn't realize at the time, even before I applied for the visa. But I saw some of those work that I've done, working maybe with the charity to create, resources for young people, like a course book for them to develop interest in research, develop interest in university. So I did some of those. I also, was a facilitator for Alan Turing Data Study Group to, work on research and proof of concept around deploying machine learning as well in the energy industry to prevent blackouts. That's like what they call cascading failure, or in a Niger term, like power NEPA
Yeah, yeah.
failure, but much more than that. So
Okay.
yeah, so those were the kind of things I did outside on the volunteering side. I also was involved with we'll call it a non-profit that trained over
Okay.
10,000 students globally. So
Sorry,
yeah,
sorry.
those were
Let me cut you there. I think we will still come back to that.
all right. Okay.
You finished from engineering in Nigeria, right?
Yeah,
Okay.
electrical.
I believe 100% that if you did not pick up computer science, you wouldn't have gotten this visa. What pushed you to get into computer science?
Okay, well, on the point around if I would have gotten it with or without computer science, I think that there are also other, it's not tied to just tech. I mean, tech for me, probably maybe if I picked another field, I could also have been interested in research. So anyone that is really doing research stands a big chance in this
Okay.
visa, both for UK and Australia. So for me, yeah, tech is one of the key. If you go to those countries offering global talent, you always see digital technology sector there. But also there are other fields, and maybe when we come to that, I'll talk more around that. I think your question was what made me choose computer science in the first place.
Yes.
Yeah. Well, it's been, I would say, from my younger days, what I was really interested in was computer engineering, right? That like somehow I just wanted to do engineering back then. I think we had a career fair in secondary school, and I just saw it was outstanding for me to see a woman speaking to us about engineering, and it piqued my interest. And yeah, from then on, I just, I found myself pursuing that path and leading up to where I am now.
So, okay, can you just continue on? You were trying to explain more about the evidence that you use for the global talent visa. You've already touched on some of them. So what other evidence were kind of strong evidence for you on getting this visa? Because we already know that probably two or three evidence can just give you the visa. So what was your strong evidence?
Yeah. Okay. So when I was applying, first off, because I was coming from a research background and for the digital technology roots, there was a lot around you. You need to be a founder or an employee or a senior exec. And when I looked at what I was doing at that time, it didn't look like it would fit. I mean, I had bits and pieces of those things, but at that time, based on the work I was doing around research, at the start, I felt out of place. I remember when I was actually looking out for resources, I came across your video, Raymond, where you shared your story. Yeah. And I was like, okay, this is actually doable. And I found just a few of those videos back then that kind of really motivated me that because when I compared what they had on the guideline and what people were saying, it just seemed to me that the guideline was looking like it was not me, it was maybe someone else from the galaxy. But eventually I could relate to and start bringing it to myself. So that research part was, for me, I used that around my recommenders. Many of them came from research background. My mandatory criteria as well around my leadership. I also used like the work I'd done as a reviewer in journals and conferences. So that also formed part of my evidence. And then I also was able to use just everything around research, part of the criteria, because they had, a specific criteria around research and, academia related. So again, research, you don't need to be in academia to be a researcher. You can still be in the industry as long as you're actually doing very good research. Yeah, so I got an endorsement because for that one, you need someone who would endorse your research. So, and that needs to be like a top person, let's say a professor, someone that has really good research profile to endorse your research. So I got that evidence. I also, and that's the only criteria where you could also, if you've got a distinction, maybe your bachelor's and your master's, you could include that as an award. And several other scholarships that I had gotten, PhD scholarships. So I included those as part of my evidence. Even the conferences I had attended, I had spoken at those conferences and published. So that also formed part of. So I would say research I say 50% of my evidence was around research, but also, like I mentioned, volunteering was also a big part of my evidence. The volunteering work that I'd done, with Neuromatch Academy that, trains people around AI, computational neuroscience. So as at that time, I was a senior exec on the organizing team for the conference. So I used that. And I talked about the work I'd done with the charity to produce an AI course book, as well as the one that I had done with Alan Turing. It was also research oriented to do like a preliminary research around AI in energy. Yeah, so all of this formed my example. I'm also kind of to put it out there. When I was doing all these things, engaging in these activities, I was not even thinking about global talent visa. I didn't even know the global talent visa existed. And that's what I tell people, that whatever you do towards building, just think of it like you're building your career profile when you are preparing for the application.
Somebody's coming. I just have to ask if continue. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay. I think you've spoken a lot. Let me just let's jump to Australia. The process in the UK and the process in Australia, was it kind of the same process when applying for the Australian Global Talent Visa?
Yeah, that's an interesting one, because there were a lot that were similar, but one of the key differences there was that you needed a nominator. You needed someone to nominate you for that visa. And that person has to, because remember, actually the key difference between the Global Talent Australia and the UK was that for the Australia, it is straight permanent residency, which is what we call ILR here in the UK. Yeah, so it gives you, once you get it, you're already a permanent resident, So, and one of the things they require is that you have a nominator. Your nominator needs to be an Australian permanent resident or a citizen or a New Zealand citizen or permanent resident. So one of those three. Yeah, so that was actually the challenging bit, but there are also things that you can do. For example, if you're in digital technology sector, you can apply to the Australian Computer Society, or if you're an engineer, to Engineers Australia as an organization, because it's either an individual or an organization that can endorse you. You can get endorsements from either an individual or an organization. And this visa does not require you to have an employment. You don't need to have an employment, but if there are also different routes, like in Australia, if you already have an employment, you could use other routes as well. So you don't need to have an employment, which is the cool thing with any organization. Yeah.
Okay. Right. So let's already we understand that you are a coach on this visa. You must have coached a whole lot of people on getting this visa. I also do coaching job as well, though I don't really have the time to focus on that. But from your experience, what would you say are the common mistakes that people normally make, that you normally observe, like anytime you look at their evidence or anytime you are talking with someone that wants to apply for the visa, you commonly spot these mistakes?
Interesting one. So, and I will use a recent case because we had someone who she had applied on her own, and by the time she sees I also do like pro bono stuff on the forum, right? Like, engaging in the community, giving advice and help in the community. And she had seen my activities on the community and reached out. And, even when she had submitted her application and hadn't gotten any response, she shared just from her list of evidence, and I already spotted the flaw in it. I was just hoping, okay, maybe a miracle could happen and she will get a good response. But unfortunately, she was rejected. And one of the things which we also see commonly among some other applicants is not really understanding and interpreting the criteria very well. You have 5 criteria in total, and sometimes people mix it up. People could, put innovation in impact and put, work outside occupation in impact. They could mix it up. So, that guideline, even, till today, I still go back to that guideline because it's always, apart from the fact that they're always updating it and you need to keep yourself updated, the fact that there's a lot there. So it's like reading the law and you're trying to interpret it at every point. So it's a guide at all points in the whole application process. So some persons just rush through the guideline and they're like, okay, I'm going to just put up an application, but they don't really, sit down to understand this is what this means. And you would see people missing out, even things that are very, very obvious from the guideline. So one of the things that is stipulated is you need to use your recent evidence, like in the past 5 years, the work you've done in the past 5 years, right? So even if you've been in tech, I'm using the technician visa as an example. Even if you've been in tech for the past 15 years, you can't use the work you did 10 years ago. And I know it could be very annoying and heartbreaking for some person because you did this wonderful work or you published that article that got a lot of traction 10 years ago, but you've been asked to stick with the past 5 years of evidence. So, and those are the things that commonly people do that make them get rejected, not interpreting the guideline and just following it as it is. And
okay. Another thing that I've discovered, you are a public figure.
Public figure, that's a big word.
You are a public figure.
Please define what public figure means. So let me know.
Either on this visa or in real life, I don't know. So the point I'm making is that a lot of people are reaching out to you on this visa to help them, to guide them. Now, I want to ask, how do you approach, or what's the advice you give to people that the moment they reach out to you, you discover that they don't have enough evidence for the visa? You can already tell, probably from their messages or the call that you receive. You already know that they don't have strong evidence for the visa. What do you tell them?
Okay. Yeah, that's an interesting one because I remember one of the things that I did when I was applying for I wanted to apply for the visa was to use some of those eligibility assessment forms. So there are some forms out there online that you can just use, and they will ask you certain questions, and at the end they'll say, okay, you seem to be eligible or you seem not. I filled one of those forms and the response I got was I was not eligible. So if I had gone by that, I would probably not be here with you, speaking with you. So and that's one of the things about this application. It is unique, right? It is even when we look at certain things and advice, it's still unique to everyone. Everyone has a unique story, and that's what we try to bring out, that unique story around your career journey, and your impacts in that sector. So one of the things anyway, just maybe from out of experience and understanding looking at different profiles, what works, why people get rejected. Sometimes you spot someone who is really a good potential. And mind you, this visa has two pathways. It's either you are really like a talent, a leader or potential leader, which is maybe you're in the early years of your career within the past 5 years, or in that sector, let's say tech, for example. So what we we do is still point out these are the areas, okay, you're strong in now. These are the areas that you're doing something, but probably hasn't gained traction. Probably you have, a startup idea, but there hasn't been any impact yet or achievement. It's still at the idea phase. So these are the areas you could spend some time and start to work and build up your profile. And that could be just having a plan. Remember, like I said, when we were doing some of these things, we didn't even know there was a global talent visa. So what I tell people is it's a win-win, right? You have a plan that you're going to apply for the global talent visa, and maybe you're going to be ready for it, genuinely ready, not just because you want to apply for a visa, but you really have a passion in that field and you're really contributing genuinely. And you have that plan that in the next 1 year, these are the areas and gaps to fill to get ready. By the time you get to that point of being ready to apply for the visa, it's a win-win for your career because everything you're going to be doing one way or the other, it's going to contribute, to either your visibility, your network, building your network, your career profile. Okay, just imagine a case where you have 2 data scientists, for example. They are both very technically sound. But when you pick up their CV, you see that this one, he has contributed to startup Overflow, like his or GitHub, he has this
Yeah.
number of repos, he has this number of contributions that he has been contributing to open source projects or spoken at events, out of the two, the one that has gone extra mile will have a competitive advantage over the other. So it's a win-win eventually, because the essence of even getting the global talent is that you're going to be even add more to the country that you're coming to that visa with. So either as an employee, as a founder, so they want to see that you can really contribute, you can, make a difference and make an impact. Yeah.
All right, that's a good one. I just want to use this opportunity to encourage anyone that is watching the video, because you talked about volunteering and charity work that you did. I normally tell people, if you are looking at something like this, the moment you get into the country, you should consider volunteering and charity, because it helps a lot. People just take it for granted. But I did it as well, and you're just confirming that you did it as well. So it's not all about pushing for the money, getting the money, working for money. Something like this is really going to help you, because it's going to push your profile and give you that advantage if you are applying for this kind of visa. Right. On I would say other countries like the US, they also have this kind of visa, and maybe South Korea as well. They might not really call it global talent visa, but they have something like this in place. Do you also coach people on getting this visa in other places?
Okay, so one of the things, like doing our research and also having contact with some persons that's come around, you realize that there are lots of similarities between, like you said, they might not call it global talent visa. US has the EB1, EB2, O1, O2, and so on, kind of visa that's for people with extraordinary ability and achievements in different sectors. So tech is one of them. There are also sciences, humanities, and so on. So, but one thing that, even just looking at the US one, there are lots of similarities. There are lots of the evidence that you could use in the UK one that is going to apply. Of course, there will be differences and uniqueness, and also it depends on how that environment interprets your evidence. So, for example, both countries could have speaking, but for US, they might be looking at certain things in what you show, and UK is looking at different things. So it's also going to vary based on how the country interprets it. But at that level of just having that initial, checking eligibility and providing support, we do that across board because of the similarities that come with these different visas. The goal is, this person is extraordinary, and you want to bring out what makes you extraordinary, for that application.
Okay. Looking at the application process, do you do this kind of personal, or do you have a team that you are working with to help people to get the visa? That is the first question. Looking at the application process, how do you kind of go through people's evidences and like the process? Because I understand it takes a whole lot of process. How do you handle all this?
Yeah. So in terms of whether personal or a team, we have a team, that caters to different aspects of the application, and one of the things that, like, the key thing is, first of all, just going to the process now. When the person comes, sometimes people come at different stages of their journey. There are people who come, because they are just interested in this visa, but they haven't made a start. They don't even know if they're eligible for it, right? And you don't just want to jump in and start applying when you are not sure
You're
of
not
your
ready,
eligibility.
yes.
So at that point, it's assessing their eligibility, analyzing what the gaps are, and giving them recommendations. If they are not ready, then these are the practical steps to take to get ready. And if they are ready, it's to then begin to match, do like a strategy session with them to match their evidence to the criteria to really profile. It's like you're digging into the past. So sometimes one interesting thing is you're speaking with someone, it's like, oh yes, I remember I did this, right? I remember I did that. And that I remember I did this is as you're having that conversation, they are kind of checking their background. Some people have forgotten some things that they had done, or they never actually thought that it's going to be useful for the application. But that conversation draws out, those experiences, those examples, and you start to fit them and piece them together and fit them in the right places. And then from that point, the next thing would be evidence gathering. Now, evidence gathering is a collaborative effort, right? Because on one side, there is one of the strongest things in this application is your network. You need this. When they say your network is your net worth, this is where
you need
it
it,
at
yeah.
play. Exactly. So, but even that guidance on how to approach it, some persons say, oh, I don't know anyone who is an expert or a senior leader in the field, or you can just guide them on how to approach that, right? And for example, the person I used as my nominator for the Australian visa, it was based on that process of networking and building a relationship that came about. So there are kind of keys and principles to around that we guide on. And from that point of gathering evidence, it becomes iterative, in terms of this is examples of what you should put together, but also, fine-tuning it to the point where it can also come out like excellent. And then because when you're doing that, it's like different evidence, you're working on them. But another challenging point is bringing everything together into one application. That's why, because there are guidelines. These visas have guidelines on number of documents you need to put together, how it should be, and all that. So kind of bringing all of that together to form one application and to say, yes, it's ready to submit. This is how you should, even on the form. There are also some tricky bits around the form. This is how it should be submitted. But after that, after clicking that submit, you still need to manage. We had an example of a client that was even apprehensive, always checking, that the person will maybe be worried, be anxious. So also kind of helping them through that stage up until when they get a decision. And the sweetest part, the most exciting part of this process is when you get that call and the person is like, is this the email? Can I send it to you so you can confirm? Is this really the email where they said, oh yeah, we have considered you, that you are eligible for the exceptional talent. So you say, yes, it's the email. And they're like, oh, wow. So that's the journey.
Right. We still have a lot to touch, but we don't have much time. I know a lot of people want to reach out to you, which I will display your vital information on the video on the screen so that they can see. Lastly, if you can just use 3 minutes, how can you encourage, I already said you're a public figure, how can you encourage more girls or young girls to get to your position, to have the experience that you have, everything that you have? How can you encourage young girls that are watching this video?
Yeah, one of the things to realize is, that at any point you are in your career, just understand that it's a journey. Even myself, I'm on a journey.
Yeah.
Right. And every point I'm raising the bar and raising the bar, So right now for me, my focus is kind of giving back, helping other people. And doing that, I'm also improving and growing, but one thing to understand is it's a journey. And in that journey, you don't need to walk that journey alone. Right. So that's where having the right support system, and we're in an age where there's so many information out there, but it's also about how you can harness that information to work for you, right? So that's where maybe having a support network, just take it that your career is your program, your project, and don't even be afraid to seek help. And sometimes when that help is not coming, just keep going and going and don't lose focus because eventually, you're going to get to your destination. Like we said, some of these things we're doing, volunteering, doing this, working unpaid, that doesn't mean that you should not get paid, right? But there's something that you can take as this is my passion as well. And, I can work out my time around the time I spend doing a paid job and the time I spend just giving back to the community. And when we say giving back, you don't need to be, as Raymond said, public figure before you start giving back. Just the little things you're doing.
You can, yes.
Your own, yes, you can, because somehow you're learning, you're growing as you do that.
Wow, I think I've really learned from you as well. The video is not just for my subscribers. I learn a lot from you. Thank you so much for coming on to the channel and for sharing this light to a whole lot of people. Like I said,
thank you for having me, and thanks for all you do. Like I mentioned earlier, that your video was one of those I watched when I was also
applying.
So thanks for the work you do for
the
community, the information you share out there. I know people are really, using it to progress in their career and endeavors. So it's really awesome.
I think
keep it up.
The video was really helpful because me and you already understand. Looking at that criteria, you just feel like, no, this is not for me. Like you said, you're already discouraged. So yeah, that's a good one. So thank you. I appreciate, and I'll talk with you some other time.
All right. Thank you so much.
Take care.
You. Yes, bye.